Thank you. Well, hey everyone, thanks for turning out. This is great, an amazing turnout today. My name's Ajay. I'm the Chief Marketing and Product Officer at Dynamic Signal, and we are an employee advocacy platform. And what we do is we help brands empower their employees to be brand advocates, and we do that over mobile and social and web, so that employees can really be truly engaged and kind of talk about the brand story in an authentic way and simultaneously build their own personal brands as employees while they're helping their actual employer out. So we're really excited to be doing that for a lot of great brands and a lot of Fortune 500s and Global 50s. And we're partnered up with Mark and Cheryl, who wrote The Social Employee, which is a great book all about empowering employees and kind of enabling a culture of transformation and change through employees and their authentic voices. So with that said, Mark, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, good. Hi, Mark Burgess. I'm president of Blue Focus Marketing. Work with my partner, Cheryl. Dino had a wonderful segue into this pit, which is really talking about employees, the power of your employees. It's something that every one of you have. Your employees, you're an employee at a minimum. You may be a social executive. You have employees around you and underneath you. It's sort of the best kept secret in the world is that they are there and the opportunity is great. So in the book we talked about several brands, certainly including IBM and a little smaller brand in Utah, Domo, that does business intelligence. Adobe, Southwest, Cisco, Dell. They all have different stories, different paths to making that work. And we like to call it the whole process, joining the social employee revolution. Because it's something you could go back and do and start today, and you could engage them, and the opportunity to build your business is tremendous. So it's a different kind of, call it disruptive innovation. Not quite the same as Jeff Bezos with the drones coming overhead delivering packages. That's a little more extreme. This is heck of a lot easier to do with the tremendous potential to make it work.
Awesome. Well, I've started to put together a list of all of the other use cases and applications for the Amazon drones, and I'm tracking that list on Twitter with Sandy Carter and Jeremiah Owyang, and it's worth checking out because there are all sorts of wild ideas there, including dropping your kids off at daycare with your drones. So that was my contribution to the list, but a little twisted.
Right.
But anyways, yeah. So what's what's exciting about the social employee and how engaged they can be is the opportunity to get your brand story told in this really authentic way. One of the interesting data points that we kind of tend to talk about is the Edelman Trust Barometer, where Edelman measured and determined that if an employee shares the exact same brand message as your brand advertising, your corporate marketing might do, that message has a 58% higher engagement and conversion rate than what you would see out of your corporate marketing delivering the exact same piece of content. So putting that content into the hands of your employees is a really powerful opportunity. Because this is a content marketing summit, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about how employees can be part of that content lifecycle and content chain, and how you can harness and tap into their collective reach and strength. So, Mark, with that said, there's a lot of great brands that you cover in your book. One of those brands is IBM,
Yeah.
and they're hosting us here today. Why don't you touch on kind of a few of the secrets of IBM's success that you identified in the book? And it's a wonderful case study, and if you guys haven't gotten a copy of the book, you should. It's a great case study to read. And there are a number of others. So there's case studies from Southwest Airlines, IBM, Adobe, and a bunch of others. But the IBM one in particular is a really fascinating read. So tell us a little bit about what IBM's done right and wrong.
Sure. Well, we interviewed a number of great executives. One of them was name was Ethan McCarthy, who's I think in charge of the digital area for IBM. And we talked about things that are really important to employees and how you can make social really work. And one of the biggest challenges that they had, and other brands, and you probably have as well, is developing this social media policy for the rules of engagement. How do we make this work? A lot of brands are concerned about if we give them too much authority, what are they going to do with it? Others are saying let's empower them, let's work with that, which is what the brands in the book fundamentally are really doing. So in terms of developing a social media policy, what IBM did was they let the employees write it. So you think about, rather than you sit together with your lawyer for like 3 months and bang out a 90-page document and say, here's your policy, now you're free to do whatever, and we might fire you, by the way, if you don't do it right, is the process was a beautiful process of employees engaging, developing a process they believed in that led to employees, writing thousands of blogs, doing, tons of other things on social media. And I think Ethan referred to that as kind of the Magna Carta moment, that when they realized what they had. In fact, it became so powerful that other brands have come to IBM and kind of borrowed the social strategy. And true sense of kind of co-creation and sharing, they let them use that. There's also another analogy that he had, it's in the book, is talking about if you take a baseball and take a bag of marbles, right? So they both, displace the kind of, if you put them in water, they both displace like the same amount of weight. The difference is when you look at the bag of marbles and you kind of equate that to your social employees, you have something like 300 times the surface area as you have on the baseball. So you have employees who are engaged, who understand your objectives, your guidelines, they know where your company is headed, and they know what their role is, and they are empowered. And it's a whole sense, too, of thinking about, millennials in general. That, sort of like I'm thinking my generation was, you're going to pay me to do something, thank you very much, and I'll cash my check. All right, today it's more about, all right, you're going to pay me to do something, but why am I going to do that? So build into that the why, which is what another brand that Cisco talks a lot about in the book, getting employees engaged. Why am I doing this? And once you've absolutely communicated the why, and then you empower them and give them the right policy, they're going to make it go. So I think the IBM chapter is probably the longest one in the book. It has that story and a number of other ones in terms of how they use some incredible tools like connections to really make it work and to make it go. And something else called a digital hub. So they have engaged employees that love what they're doing, and they really truly represent their brand. And all of the IBM executives we talked to would say the same thing, that the employees really are the brand, right? It isn't the ad campaign and other things we're doing. And you think of some of those statistics like 12% of people trust advertising, 80% of people trust people they know, people that they work with. So the opportunity to have employees talking authentically about important areas that are interesting to people. We have another story in the book with AT&T that does kind of a similar thing, where it's employees really talking about areas that people need to know about, more about cloud security, whatever, without overtly pitching them on the stuff. It's like eventually the idea is that they'll come back, same with IBM, that they'll come back and buy from me because you have, in a very authentic way, told me what I really need to know, and I appreciate that.
So how do you get employees to actually generate the right content? Because that's a big question mark for a lot of brands. How do you help them stay on message, create great content that is really going to help the brand create an impact? The analogy of the bag of marbles, the same size as the baseball, having a much greater surface area, reach, impact, kind of opportunity to drive awareness through your employee's authentic voice. Break it down for us, right?
Sure.
It's a really nice theoretical idea, but how do you make it happen in a way that's safe for the employee and also safe for the brand?
Right. Well, there are actually, interesting segue, there are platforms like Dynamic Signal that can actually help you do that. And I'll tell you why. If you go to your employees and say, you guys are going to be doing, tweeting and blogging and do all this extra work, they're already like maxed out and they have no time to do it. But if you give them a tool, if you show them an opportunity, a way to use the tool that will help them, define the right kind of content, look at it within, their network, how they're going to share it out. You give them a tool and a platform that's going to make it easy for them. All of a sudden, they are engaged. Then you do other things like leaderboards and rewards, and you get them excited and motivated about what they're doing. But the real key to the whole thing, I think, is they're working for the brand who they're working for today, but they're working for themselves. They are their personal brand, right? Everyone in the room has a personal brand you think about, and if you leave the place you're working for today, you still have that personal brand. So the employee has the value of that. They're building their brand, they're helping to build the brand that's giving them the paycheck, and they're excited about what they're doing. And there's other areas like Dino has, by the way, a wonderful platform. I just have a quick plug for Dino on Triber, which if you don't know what that is, somewhere at the break or whatever, talk to him too. So.
Cool. So when you look at kind of the continuum of things that an employee can do, the content that they can create and share, what types of content comes to mind as being really effective for employees to either create or share in their social networks, and where can a brand start in terms of that content journey? What can they ask their employees to do?
Well, I think that, again, a lot of their employees may already have their own networks. They may be using Twitter, Facebook, blogging, or some combination of that. And I think part of the key in going back to the social policy is that you don't force them to do things they don't want to do. And you try to look for their sweet spot. If they really enjoy blogging, if they're doing tweeting a lot, they're on Facebook, that's where you want to kind of leverage. So you start with where their interests are. You get an excited employee who's really happy doing what they're doing, and then but you clearly let them know what the mission and the goals of the brand and what it is you're trying to do and where they fit into it. And then they've got a platform that can help them initiate it and make it go.
Great. So one of the things that kind of we often see is a really significant linkage between employee advocacy and employee engagement. That the moment you give your employees a platform to kind of talk about the brand that they work for, in most cases love, you see an increased employee engagement and a lot of great corporate performance and productivity benefits and gains there. Tell us a little bit more about about how that's how you see that manifesting at brands and how that's even being measured.
Well, I think in terms of, again, the engagement, you find that they are truly excited about, wanting to be part of it. There are stories in the book about Dell and how they create a very, strong, empowered workforce and people that are excited about their job and what they're doing and their brand. So you understand, again, that, what are their tools, what do they do well, then you try to give them the right kind of a platform. And you train them, and you train them on more and more on the tools. Again, clearly they have understanding, where the brand is headed, what the goals are. There's a great video and/or book by a guy named Simon Sinek, and it's called Start with Why, which I would encourage, everyone. I've seen it probably 100 times, and I've played it for different, MBA classes that I teach at Rutgers. And it's all about really understanding what drives, right, the business and what that means. And if you really can lock into the why, and then you can relate that to the employee, they know what their part of it is, and they know how to make it go.
That's great. So kind of coming back to the brass tacks of content and getting employees to be part of that content chain, what kinds of asks can you have of your employees? Can you ask them to actually produce content about, work-life balance, culture at the company, the products and services that they're working on? What's normal for a brand? What should they be kind of engaging their employees on? And then once that content's created, what can the brand do to help kind of promote that content?
All right, well, I think that part of it is just again, you go back to the employee, what it is they're interested in, what they like to do, right? You don't try to force feed anything. So indeed, some may have great skills in terms of writing. And there's other ways that different brands, AT&T, for example, with the people that blog for them internally, there's a lot of focus on let's train them and let's even help them build their own networks. So you give them the tools to help them do that better. So, but a lot of people, maybe, the lion's share will not be creating content, but what they do is curating content. So you show them the kinds of content that is relevant to their customers, and they're able to then, through the tool, to be able to share that information. And you're able to, again, with the right kind of a tool, then you can have sort of the brand folks kind of looking at the quality of the messages and the flow and how those things are going out into the marketplace. So that way the brand tends to feel that they're managing the messaging, but they're not dictating it or creating it. And it's authentic because it's done by the employees in the company.
Got it. So how does a brand kind of ensure that employees kind of stay on track and don't go off, go outside of the guardrail, so to speak, and go rogue? We've all seen and heard the pretty scary stories of employees going rogue social, either leaking intellectual property on YouTube or Facebook or other channels, or even just behaving completely inappropriately on those social channels. In the case of the recent Domino's pizza employees doing all sorts of bad things to pizzas, how do you avoid those kinds of situations from arising at your brand? And It's a pretty scary thing. There are a lot of brands that kind of run away in fear from this idea and others that embrace it. You know, I think if you asked a CEO 10 years ago who their best brand ambassadors were, they would have unequivocally told you that it was their employees. But over the last 10 years, the answer to that question has become really weird and awkward because of social media. And it's hard for the CEO to embrace that idea because of the risk and kind of concerns around governance and compliance.
Yeah, I think, again, that's probably the biggest issue. The number one thing that you want to do first is develop the social media policy. Adobe has a terrific word for it, which is guardrails. So if you think of what that implies, it's not, if you don't do this right, I'm going to fire you. It's like, we're going to empower you, train you, give you some guidelines, and if you bump up against, what the requirements are, and you're going to make that work. Or back to the IBM example, the idea of creating something, your employees, there's automatic buy-in to it, and they're going to share it, and they're going to put it out there. So a lot of it's training, it's understanding what the goals are, what the objectives are, where they need to go, what the tools are, how you can try to get them there. But training is a really big part of it, something that Cheryl and I are very involved with to really help people, brand, particularly the social executive, which is another kind of a chapter in our book, talking about the executive who is the catalyst to do this. So the Ethan McCarthy example at IBM and other people we talk to are living examples of that. They are blogging, they are tweeting, they are out there, they are players. They're not just an executive say, okay, my employees, I want you to do these things. I mean, they are role models, they are leaders. So it's the social executive that's going to lead and make this work at any company that you're at.
That's great, yeah. We're certainly seeing that when a brand kind of co-creates those guidelines with employees and defines what content's appropriate, and then where the brand can have some curation and review approval, ownership of the employee's content before it's published and distributed out to the rest of the employee base is really critical. What we're finding is that employees love sharing things like job listings because they want their friends to come work for the same company. They love sharing content about products or services that they actually worked on, and there's a lot of pride in kind of that ownership. That drives a lot of employee engagement and advocacy. But part of kind of the success that we're seeing with some of the brands that we're working with is when they provide kind of those detailed guidelines of what behavior is appropriate and inappropriate. Another thing that we're seeing is the WIFM for employees. What's in it for me? It's one thing to feed employees content and ask them to share it, but there has to be a personal benefit to that employee. If you can just comment on that for a moment, I'd love to hear your take on why employees care, why will they participate in a program like this?
Well, I think they care because they care deeply about the brand that they work for, number one. And again, not a self-serving thing, but the fact they care because they have their own personal brand that they're concerned about. So that gives them the strength and the mobility. If, again, they change jobs tomorrow, their brand goes with them. So that's a powerful component. So you're marrying the two things, and you're getting them engaged about what it is they're trying to do. So it's really the balance of the two, that they realize it's going to help the brand and it's going to help themselves. And in terms of reward systems, I mean, there are examples of people that are getting promoted because they are actively engaged with their brand in the marketplace, and they're they're writing blogs. There's other rewards. There's different kinds of systems to give them different ways to incent them or motivate them to continue doing what they're doing. So there's a real life, I'm now getting something back for that. It's not kind of like the old days companies had, like the suggestion box, right? And it was like the craziest thing in the world would ever be to put a great suggestion in a box and it goes nowhere. I mean, today it's the value, what you're doing, what you're giving the brand. It's more and more brands are realizing the value of providing some kind of, like incentives back to them. So it becomes kind of a shared partnership to make it work. So it's going to help the brand, and again, it's going to help the employee. If they leave tomorrow, they are building a network, they're building their own kind of a presence. So that win-win is a classic thing that, and again, start with the social media policy, get those things working, but there isn't anyone that can't go back and work that in the organization they're in and start engaging their employees. And back to the IBM example, over 400,000 people, right, basically, out there engaged with customers. Think of the value of that. I mean, you couldn't buy that much advertising if you had all the money in the world, and nobody would care, because my own personal view, no offense to any ad agencies in the room, is that I think that model is rapidly disappearing. So we're talking about trust, we're talking about empowerment, and that's going to come from an employee. It's not going to come from an ad.
Totally agree. One of our customers, Hitachi Data Systems, has been really successful kind of putting great content into the hands of their employees so they can share it out on Twitter and LinkedIn. The personal benefit to those employees, it helps them build their brands. But a lot of the salespeople that participate in the program love it because they're able to stay socially relevant on LinkedIn and Twitter, stay engaged with prospects, and never miss an RFP or a proposal opportunity ever again.
Right.
And so we see a lot of kind of personal benefits to the employee that's trying to build and advance their own careers, in addition to kind of servicing and helping the brand as well.
Right.
Well, I think we're out of time, but thanks for your time, Mark. Really appreciate
Okay.
it, and hope you guys found this helpful.
Okay. Thanks. Good guys.